Hello, everyone. Nice to see you today, and welcome to today's reading of Artemis Fowl by Ian Colfer. And I'll pick up where I left off yesterday. Butler took the stairs 4 at a time. It was possibly the first time he had ever abandoned Master Artemis in a time of crisis. But Juliet was family, and there was obviously something seriously wrong with his baby sister. That fairy had said something to her, and now she was just sitting in the cell giggling. Butler feared the worst. If anything were to happen to Juliet, he didn't know how he would live with himself. He felt a dribble of sweat slide down the crown of his shaven head. The whole situation was shooting off in bizarre directions. Fairies, magic, and now a hostage loose in the manor. How could he be expected to control things? It took a 4-man team to guard the lowliest politician, but he was expected to contain this impossible situation on his own. Butler sprinted down the corridor into what had just recently been Captain Short's cell. Juliet was sprawled on the cot, enraptured by a concrete wall. "What are you doing?" he gasped, drawing the Sig Sauer 9mm with practiced ease. His sister barely spared him a glance. "Quiet, you big ape. Louis the Love Machine is on. He ain't so tough. I could take him." Butler blinked. She was talking gibberish, obviously drugged. "Let's go. Artemis wants us upstairs in the Situation Room." Juliet pointed a manicured finger at the wall. "Artemis can wait. This is for the Intercontinental title, and it's a grunge match. Louis ate Hogman's pet piggy." The manservant studied the wall. It was definitely blank. He didn't have time for this. "Right, let's go," he growled, slinging his sister over a broad shoulder. "No, you big bully," she protested, hammering his back with tiny fists. "Not now! Hogman! Hogman!" Butler ignored the objections, settling into a loping run. Who the heck was this Hogman person? One of her boyfriends, no doubt. He was going to keep closer tabs on callers to the lodge in the future. "Butler, pick up!" It was Artemis on the handheld. Butler jiggled his sister up a foot so he could reach his belt. "Lollipops!" barked his employer. "Say again? I thought you said, get out of there! Take cover! Take cover!" Take cover? The military term didn't sound right coming out of Master Artemis's mouth, like a diamond ring in a lucky bag. "Take cover?" "Yes, Butler, cover. I thought speaking in primal terms would be the quickest route to your cognitive functions. Obviously, I was mistaken." That was more like it. Butler scanned the hall for a nook to duck into. Not much choice. The only shelter was provided by the suits of medieval armor punctuating the walls. The manservant ducked into the alcove behind a 14th century knight, complete with lance and mace. Juliet tapped the breastplate. "You think you're mean? I could take you with one hand." "Quiet," hissed Butler. He held his breath and listened. Something was approaching the main door. Something big. Butler leaned out far enough to get one eye on the lobby. Then you can say that the doorway exploded, but that particular verb doesn't do the action justice. Rather, it shattered into infinitesimal pieces. Butler had seen something like this once before when a 4.7 earthquake had rippled through a Colombian drug lord's estate seconds before he had been scheduled to blow it up. This was slightly different, more localized, very professional. It was classic anti-terrorist tactics. Hit him with smoke and sonics and then go in while the targets were disoriented. Whatever was coming, it would be bad. He was certain of it. He was absolutely right. Dust clouds settled slowly, depositing a pale sheet on the Tunisian rug. Madame Fowl would have been furious if she ever put so much as a toe outside the attic door. Butler's instincts told him to move. Zigzag across the ground floor, make for higher ground, stay low to minimize the target. This would be the perfect time to do it, before visibility cleared. Any second now, a hail of bullets would be whistling through the archway, and the last place he wanted to be was pinned down in a lower level. And on any other day, Butler would have moved. He would have been halfway up the stairs before his brain had time for second thoughts. But today he had his baby sister over his shoulder spouting gibberish, and the last thing he wanted to do was expose her to murderous assault fire. With Juliet in the state she was in, she'd probably challenge the fairy commandos to a tag wrestling match. And though his sister talked tough, she was just a kid, really. No match for trained military personnel. So Butler hunkered down, propped Juliet against the tapestry behind a suit of armor, and checked his safety catch. Off. Good. Come and get me, fairy boys. Something moved in the dust haze. It was immediately obvious to Butler that something wasn't human. The manservant had been on too many safaris not to recognize an animal when he saw it. He studied the creature's gait, possibly simian, similar upper body structure to an ape, but bigger than any primate Butler had ever seen. If it was an ape, then his handgun wasn't going to be of much use. You could put 5 rounds in the skull of a bull ape, and he'd still have time to eat you before his brain realized he was dead. But it wasn't an ape. Apes don't have night eyes. This creature did. Glowing crimson pupils, half hidden behind shaggy fur locks. Tusks, too, but not elephantine. These were curled, with serrated edges. Gutting weapons. Butler felt a low tingle in his stomach. He had that feeling once before, on the first day at the Swiss Academy. It was fear. The creature stepped clear of the dust haze. Butler gasped. Again, his first since the academy. This was like no adversary he'd ever faced before. The manservant realized instantly what the fairies had done. They had sent in a primal hunter, a creature with no interest in magic or rules, a thing that would simply kill anything in its way, regardless of species. This was the perfect predator. This much was clear from the meat-ripping points on his teeth, from the dried gore crusted beneath its claws, and from the distilled hatred spilling from its eyes. The troll shambled forward, squinting through the chandelier light. Yellow claws scraped along the marble tiling, throwing up sparks in their wake. It was stifling now, snorting curious breaths, head cocked to one side. Butler had seen that pose before, on the snouts of starved pit bulls, just before their Russian handlers set them loose on a bear hunt. The shaggy head froze, its snout pointed directly at Butler's hiding place. It was no coincidence. The manservant peeked out between the chainmail of fingers of a gauntlet. Now came the stalk. Once a scent had been acquired, the predator would attempt a slow, silent approach before the lightning strike. But apparently the troll had not read the predator's handbook because it didn't bother with the stealth approach, jumping directly to the lightning strike. Moving faster than Butler would have believed possible, the troll sprang across the lobby, brushing the medieval armor aside as though it were a shop mannequin. Juliet blinked. "Oh," she gasped. "It's Bigfoot Bob, Canadian champion, 1998. I thought you were in the Andes looking for your relatives." Butler didn't bother to correct her. His sister wasn't lucid. At least she would die happy. While his brain was contemplating this morbid observation, Butler's gun hand was coming up. He squeezed the trigger as rapidly as the Sig Saucer's mechanism would allow. 2 in the chest, 3 between the eyes. That was the plan. He got the chest shots in, but the troll interfered before Butler could complete the formation. The interference took the form of scything tusks that ducked below Butler's guard. They coiled around his trunk, slicing through his Kevlar-reinforced jacket like a razor through rice paper. Butler felt a cold pain as the serrated ivory pierced his chest. He knew immediately that the wound was fatal. His breath came hard. There was a lung gone, and gouts of blood were matting the troll's fur. His blood. No one could lose that amount and live. Nevertheless, the pain was instantly replaced by curious euphoria, some form of natural anesthetic injected through channels in the beast's tusks, more dangerous than the deadliest poison. In minutes, Butler would not only stop struggling, but no giggling to his grave. The manservant fought against the narcotics in his system, struggling furiously in the troll's grip. But it was no use. His fight was almost over before it had begun. The troll grunted, flipping the limp body over his head. Butler's burly frame collided with the wall at a speed human bones were never meant to withstand. The bricks cracked from floor to ceiling. Butler's spine went too. Now, even if the bloodlust didn't get him, paralysis would. Juliet was still enthralled by the mesmer. "Come on, brother, get off the canvas. We all know you're faking." The troll paused. Some basic curiosity piqued with a lack of fear. He would have suspected a trick if he could have formulated such a complicated thought. But in the end, appetite won out. The creature smelled flesh. Fresh and tender. Flesh from above ground was different, laced with surface smells. Once you've had open-air meat, it's hard to go back. The troll ran a tongue over his incisors and reached out a shaggy hand. Holly tucked the hummingbirds close to her torso, dropping into a controlled dive. She skimmed the banisters, emerging into the portico below, a stained glass dome. The time-stop light filtered unnaturally, splitting into thick azure shafts. Light, thought Holly. The helmet high beams worked before. There was no reason why they wouldn't work again. But it was too late for the male. He was a bag of broken bones. But the female, she still had a few seconds left before the troll split her open. Holly spiraled down the fake light, searching her helmet console for the Sonics button. Sonics was generally used on canines, but in this case it might provide a moment's distraction, enough to get her to ground level. The troll was reaching in towards Juliet underhand. It was a move generally reserved for the defenseless. The claws would curl in below the ribs, rupturing the heart. Minimum damage to the flesh and no last-minute tension to toughen the meat. Holly activated her Sonics, and nothing happened. Not good. Generally, your average troll would be at the very least irritated by the ultra-high frequency tone, but this particular beast didn't even shake his shaggy head. There were a couple of possibilities. 1, the helmet was malfunctioning. 2, this troll was deaf as the proverbial post. Unfortunately, Holly had no way of knowing the tones were inaudible to fairy ears. Whatever the problem, it forced Holly to adapt a strategy she would rather not have resorted to: direct contact. All to save a human's life. She'd gone Section 8, without a doubt. Holly jerked the throttle straight from fourth to reverse. Not very good for the gears. She'd get a dressing down for the mechanics for that, in the unlikely event she actually survived this never-ending nightmare. The effect of this gear crunching was to flip her around in midair so that her boot heels were pointed directly at the troll's head. Holly winced. 2 entanglements with the same troll. Unbelievable. Her heels caught the beast square in the crown of its head. At that speed, there was at least half a ton of G-force behind the contact. Only the reinforced ribbing in her suit prevented Holly's low leg bones from shattering. Even so, she heard her knee pop. The pain clawed its way to her forehead, ruined her recovery maneuver too. Instead of repelling her to a safe altitude, Holly crumpled onto the troll's back, becoming instantly entangled in the ropey fur. The troll was suitably annoyed. Not only had something distracted it from dinner, but now that something was nestled in its fur along with the cleaning slugs. The beast straightened, reached a claw hand over to the shoulder. The curved nails raked Holly's helmet, scoring parallel grooves in the alloy. Juliet was safe for the moment, but Holly had taken her place on the endangered individuals list. The troll squeezed tighter, somehow securing a grip on the helmet's anti-friction coating, which according to Foley was impossible to grip. Serious words would be had, if not in this life, then definitely the next. Captain Short found herself being hoisted aloft to face her old enemy. Holly struggled to concentrate through the pain and confusion. Her leg was swinging like a pendulum, and the troll's breath was breaking over her face in rancid waves. There had been a plan, hadn't there? Surely she didn't fly down here just to curl up and die. There must have been a strategy. All those years in the academy must have taught her something. Whatever the plan had been, it just floated out of reach somewhere between pain and shock. Out of reach. The lights, Holly! A voice in her head, probably talking to herself. An out-of-head experience. She must remember to tell Foley about this. Wait, Foley? Hit the lights, Holly! If those tusks get to work, you'll be dead before the magic can kick in. Foley? Is that you? Holly may have said this out loud, or she may just have thought it. She wasn't sure. The tunnel high beams, Captain! A different voice, not so cuddly. Hit the button now! That's an order! Oops, it was Root. She was falling down on the job again. First Hamburg, then Martina, Franca, now this. Yes, sir, she mumbled, trying to sound professional. Press it, now, Captain Short. Holly looked the troll straight in the merciless eyes and pressed the button. Very melodramatic. Or it would have been if the lights had worked. Unfortunately for Holly, in her haste, she grabbed one of the helmets cannibalized by Artemis Fowl. Hence, no sonics, no filters, and no tunnel beams. The halogen bulbs were still installed, but the wires had come loose during Artemis's investigations. Oh, dear, breathed Holly. Oh, dear, barked Root. What's that supposed to mean? The beams are offline, explained Foley. Oh, Root's voice trailed off. What more was there to say? Holly squinted at the troll. If you didn't know the trolls were dumb animals, you'd swear the beast was grinning. Sitting there with blood dripping from various chest wounds, grinning. Captain Short didn't like being grinned at. Laugh this off, she said, and she butted the troll with the only weapon available to her, her helmeted head. Valid, undoubtedly, but about as effective as trying to cut down a tree with a feather. Luckily, the ill-advised blow had a side effect. For a split second, two strands of conductor filament connected, sending power flooding to one of the tunnel beams. 400 watts of white light blasted through the troll's crimson eyes, dispatching lightning rods of agony to the brain. "Ha ha!" mumbled Holly in a second before the troll convulsed involuntarily. Its spasms sent her spinning across the parquet floor, leg jittering behind her. The wall was approaching at an alarming speed. Maybe, thought Holly hopefully, this will be one of those impacts where you don't feel any pain until later. No, replied her pessimistic side, afraid not. She slammed into a Norman narrative tapestry, bringing it tumbling down on top of her. Pain was immediate and overwhelming. "Oof!" grunted Foley. "I felt that. Visuals are shot. Pain sensors were right off the scale. Your lungs are busted, Captain. We're going to lose you for a while. But don't worry, Holly. Your magic should be kicking in already." Holly felt the blue tingle of magic scurrying to her various injuries. Thank the gods for acorns. But it was too little too late. The pain was way behind her threshold. Just before unconsciousness claimed her, Holly's hand flopped from beneath the tapestry. It landed on Butler's arm, touching the bare skin. Amazingly, the human wasn't dead. A dodge pulse forced the blood through the smashed limbs. "Heal," thought Holly, and the magic scurried down her fingers. The troll faced a dilemma. Which female to eat first? Choices. This decision was not made any easier by the lingering agony buzzing around its shaggy head, or the cluster of bullets lodged in its fatty chest tissues. Eventually, it settled on the surface dweller. Soft human meat, no dense fairy muscle to chew through. The beast squatted low, tilting the girl's chin with one yellow talon. A pulsing jugular looped lazily down the length of her neck. The heart or the neck? The troll wondered. The neck, it was closer. It turned the talon sideways so that the edge pressed against the soft human flesh. One sharp swipe and the girl's own heartbeat would drive the blood from her body. Butler woke up, which was a surprise in itself. He knew immediately that he was alive because of the searing pain permeating every cubic inch of his body. This was not good. Alive he may be, but considering the fact that his neck had a 180 twist on it, he'd never as much walk the dog again, not to mention rescue his sister. The manservant twiddled his fingers. Hurt like the dickens, but at least there was movement. It was amazing that he had any motor functions at all, considering the trauma his spinal column had suffered. His toes seemed all right too, but that could have been phantom response, given that he couldn't actually see them. The bleeding from his chest wound appeared to have stopped, and he was thinking straight. All in all, he was in much better shape than he had any right to be. What in heaven's name was going on here? Butler noticed something. There were blue sparks dancing along his torso. He must be hallucinating, creating pleasant images to distract himself from the inevitable. A very realistic hallucination, it must be said. The sparks congregated at trauma points, sinking into the skin. Butler shuddered. This was no hallucination. Something extraordinary was happening here. Magical. Magic? That rang a bell in his recently reassembled cranium. Fairy magic. Something was healing his wounds. He twisted his head, wincing at the grate of sliding vertebrae. There was a hand resting on his forearm. Sparks flowed from her slim, elfin fingers, intuitively targeting bruises, breaks, or ruptures. There were a lot of injuries to be dealt with, but the tiny sparks handled it all quickly and effectively, like an army of mystical beavers repairing storm damage. Butler could actually feel his bones knitting and the blood retreating from semi-congelated scabs. His head twisted involuntarily as his vertebrae slid into their niches, and strength returned in a rush as magic reproduced the 3 liters of blood lost through his chest wound. Butler jumped to his feet. Actually jumped. He was himself again. No, it was more than that. He was as strong as he'd ever been. Strong enough to have another crack at that beast hunkered over his baby sister. He felt his rejuvenated heart speed up like the stroke of an outboard motor. Calm, Butler told himself. Passion is the enemy of efficiency. But calm or no, the situation was desperate. The beast had already effectively killed him once, and this time he didn't even have the sig saucer. His own skills aside, it would be nice to have a weapon. Something with a bit of weight to it. His boot clinked on a metallic object. Butler glanced down at the debris strewn in the troll's wake. Perfect. There was nothing but snow on the view screen. Come on, urged Drew. Hurry up. Foley elbowed past his superior. Maybe if you didn't insist on blocking all the circuit boards. Root shuffled out of the way grudgingly. In his mind, it was the circuit board's fault for being behind him. The centaur's head disappeared into an access panel. Anything? Nothing, just interference. Root slapped the screen. Not a good idea. First, because there was not one chance in a million that it could actually help. And second, because plasma screens grow extremely hot after prolonged use. Darn it! Don't touch the screen, by the way. Oh, ha, ha, ha. We have time for jokes now, do we? No, actually. Anything? The snow settled into recognizable shapes. That's it. Hold it there. We got a signal. I've activated the secondary camera. Plain old video, I'm afraid, but it will have to do. Root didn't comment. He was watching the screen. This must be a movie. It couldn't be real life. So what's going on in there? Anything interesting? Root tried to answer, but his soldier's vocabulary just didn't have the superlatives. What? What is it? The commander made another attempt. It's the human. I've never... Oh, forget it, Foley. You're going to have to see this for yourself. Holly watched the entire episode through a gap in her tapestry folds. If she hadn't seen it, she wouldn't have believed it. In fact, it wasn't until she reviewed the videos for her reports that she was certain the whole thing wasn't a hallucination brought on by a near-death experience. As it was, the video sequence became something of a legend, initially doing the rounds on the amateur home movie cable shows and ending up on the LP Academy hand-to-hand curriculum. The human, Butler, was strapping on a medieval suit of armor. Incredible as it seemed, he apparently intended going toe-to-toe with the troll. Holly tried to warn him, tried to make some sound, but the magic hadn't re-inflated her crushed lungs. Butler closed his visor, hefting a vicious mace. Now, he grunted through the grill, I'll show you what happens when someone lays a hand on my sister. The human twirled the mace as though it were a cheerleader's baton, ramming it home between the troll's shoulder blades. A blow like that, while not fatal, certainly distracted the troll from its intended victim. Butler planted his foot just above the creature's haunches and tugged the weapons free. It relinquished its grip with a sickly, sucking sound. He skipped backwards, settling into a defensive stance. The troll rounded on him, all 10 talons sliding out to their full extent. Drops of venom glistened from the tips of each trunk. Playtime was over, but there would be no lightning strike this time. The beast was wary. It had been hurt. The latest attacker would be afforded the same respect as another male of his species. As far as the troll was concerned, his territory was being encroached on, and there was only one way of solving the dispute of this nature, the same way the trolls solved every dispute. I must warn you, said Butler straight-faced, I am armed and prepared to use deadly force if necessary. Holly would have groaned if she could. Banter. The human was trying to engage a troll in macho repartee. Then Captain Short realized her mistake. The words weren't important. It was the tone he employed. Calm, soothing, like a trainer with a spooked unicorn. Step away from the female. Easy now. The troll ballooned its cheeks and howled. Scare tactics, testing the waters. Butler didn't flinch. Yeah, real scary. Now just back out of the door and I won't have to cut you into little pieces. The troll snorted, miffed by this reaction. Generally, his roar sent whatever creature it was facing scurrying down the tunnel. One step at a time, nice and slow. Easy there, big fellow. You could almost see it in the troll's eyes. A flicker of uncertainty. Maybe this human was... And that was when Butler struck. He danced under the tusks, hammering home a devastating uppercut with his medieval weapon. The troll staggered backwards, talons flailing wildly, but it was too late. Butler had stepped out of reach, scooting across to the other side of the corridor. The troll lumbered after him, spitting dislodged teeth from pulped gums. Butler sank to his knees, sliding under and turning, the polished floor bearing him like an ice skater. He ducked and pirouetted, facing his pursuer. Guess what I found, he said, raising the sig saucer. No chest shots this time. Butler laid the rest of the automatic clip in the 10-centimeter diameter between the troll's eyes. Unfortunately for Butler, due to millennia spent butting each other, trolls have developed a thick ridge of bone covering their brows. So his textbook spread failed to penetrate the skull in spite of the Teflon-coated load. However, 10 devastator slugs can't be ignored by any creature on the planet, and this troll was no exception. The bullets beat a sledgehammer tattoo on its cranium, causing instant concussion. The animal staggered backwards, slapping at its own forehead. Butler was after it in a heartbeat, pinning one shaggy foot beneath the mace spikes. The troll was concussed, blinded by blood, and lame. A normal person would feel a shard of remorse, but not Butler. He'd seen too many men gorged by injured animals. Now was the dangerous time. It was no time for mercy. It was time to terminate with extreme prejudice. Holly could only watch helplessly as the human took careful aim and delivered a series of crippling blows to the stricken creature. First he took out the tendons, bringing the troll to its knees, and then he abandoned the mace and went to work with gauntleted hands, perhaps deadlier than the mace had been. The unfortunate troll fought back pathetically, even managed to land a few glancing blows, but they failed to penetrate the antique armor. Meanwhile, Butler toiled like a surgeon. Working on the assumption that the troll and the human physiques were basically the same, he rained blow after blow on the dumb creature, reducing it to a heap of quivering fur in so many seconds. It was pitiful to watch, and the manservant wasn't finished yet. He stripped off the bloody gauntlets, loading a fresh clip into his handgun. "Let's see how much bone you have under your chin." "No," gasped Holly with the first breath in her body. "Don't!" Butler ignored her, jamming the barrel beneath the troll's jaw. "Don't do it! You owe me!" Butler paused. Juliet was alive. It was true. Confused, certainly, but alive. He thumbed the hammer on his pistol. Every brain cell in his head screamed for him to pull the trigger, but Juliet was alive. "You owe me, human." Butler sighed. He'd regret this later. "Very well, Captain. The beast lives to fight another day. Lucky for him, I'm in a good mood." Holly made a noise. It was somewhere between a whimper and a chuckle. "Now let's get rid of our hairy friend." Butler rolled the unconscious troll onto an armored trolley, dragging it to a deserted doorway. With a huge heave, he jettisoned the lot into the suspended night. "And don't come back," he shouted. "Amazing," said Root. "Tell me about it," agreed Foley. And with that, folks, that is the end of Chapter 8. And next time, we will begin Chapter 9. Please have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.